Well, tell us one of your favorite stories about your experiences with your your morning staff meetings.
Oh, wow, that's one of my favorite experiences. Well, I'm going to tell it maybe from an internal point of view first.
Okay.
And then I'll tell a particular one that I think people liked a lot. So you can imagine the very first time I did this, right? I'm new to the company. They don't know who I am. New York real estate brokers are some of the toughest people you'll ever meet, especially on the outside. You know, on the inside, most of them are, on the inside, surprisingly, they're all human beings, right? but on the inside, they're tender, lovely people who want the same thing that all of us want, right? Love, respect, connection. And so the first time I stood in front of these people, I don't think I've ever felt more awkward in my life. I didn't want to come across as preachy, God forbid, but I also wanted to give a message that I thought could be hopefully transformative in some way. And so that struggle to find that voice that would connect in a way that is light but also meaningful in just a few short minutes really became a great practice for me. And just that activity has been a tremendous growth for me.
Yeah, it's a real discipline, actually, isn't it?
It's a discipline on many levels. You know, I mean, it was Abraham Lincoln. I love the story of Abraham Lincoln. Somebody came to him and said, "Mr. President, we'd like you to come and speak to our group, but the meeting is next week." And he said, "Well, how long would you like me to speak for?" And they kind of cleared their throat and said sheepishly, "Well, an hour." He said, "Oh, that's no problem. I thought you were going to say 10 minutes." So it's very difficult to speak short.
Especially when you have a lot of information to give, you know. It's like you have to condense it and condense it and condense it.
Right, and any good address really needs to do three things. It needs to inform, it needs to give information, it needs to inspire, and it needs to entertain. And I had a great mentor who said, "Look, you got to do all three, but if you don't entertain, they'll never ask you back to do it again."
Right.
So these things need to be entertaining as well. So I think the one that people like the most, that I had the most fun writing, is called "Try Them, Try Them," and it's based on Dr. Seuss's Green Eggs and Ham, of all things. And I was walking through the office, and one of our execs, I looked at his bookshelf, and he had Green Eggs and Ham on it. And I said, "What's that doing there?" And he said, "Alan, this is the best book on marketing you'll ever see." And he said, "You got to read it." He gave me his copy, and I went through this, and it really, and I read it probably 20 times. You know, I just kept reading and reading it and reading it, and every time I read it, I saw more and more in it, and I went deeper with it. And this book is really an existential exploration of the power of the cosmos to send you unwanted messages that lead to transformation. It really is, and Dr. Seuss it's so brilliant. And so on a surface level, you could say, yeah, it's about how to be a persistent salesman, right? This little creature, Sam I Am, keeps telling this unnamed grouchy creature to try Green Eggs and Ham. But he tries it, and he keeps appearing, and he pushes this creature who begins sitting on a sofa reading a newspaper to the very edge of despair, in which he's in the ocean, he's drowning, he's surrounded by all these strange beings who just yell at him, "Try it!" And finally, he can't say no anymore. He's exhausted. He's tired of rejecting something he doesn't even know what it is. He just knows. Talk about conservative, right? He says, "I don't know it. I'm not going to even try it." And Sam I Am says, "Try it. It's good for you." And he finally agrees to, and he discovers the thing that he's been rejecting all this time is actually good. And he becomes very grateful that this persistent creature who wouldn't let him off the hook finally drove him to the point where he had to say yes. And it's just a wonderful message, especially for our difficult times. That the times we live in that seems to be driving us towards this cliff where we think we're drowning in the water is just the medicine that we need, if we'll only say yes to it.
Yeah, it's that release that is so frightening to people, to the release of the familiar for the unknown.
Yeah, yeah. And the embracing the possibility that the things that are pushing us to change, and we hold on. Look, I do this. I'm not. When I say we, I literally mean it. We hold on so tight to how we think things ought to be, what we think we want, who we think we are, And as soon as we hold on to that tight, we stop growing, right? Because growth happens through change.
Right.
And as soon as we shut down to change, which is the essential element of all life, we start to perish. And if the universe, like Sam I Am, who could be seen as an angel, as an emissary of the divine, if the universe loves us, which it does, it's not going to let us off the hook like that. And it's going to push us, and we're going to go, why are these terrible things happening to me? Not knowing that it's done out of love. It's done out of a desire for our growth. And so that was my most fun one, writing that, because where it started is not where I expected it to end. And I think that's the most popular piece.
This language is so important. It used to be that I think there was a movement to say, to change your language from I have a set of problems to I have a set of challenges, trying to, modernize and enlighten it up to be more positive.
Right.
And I say the next step is, I have a set of gifts.
Yeah, beautiful.
So it's no longer even a challenge. It's just a gift. And then once you go into that, it opens up the entire thing into the heart, so you can understand what the gift is in this thing happening. Why is this very resistant thing in your life appearing?
Right.
It's a gift to you, like you've just described from the divine. It's really a mystical connection with the flow of life.
No question about it. I mean, the Buddhists teach, and Judaism does this, but more abstractly, I would say. Buddhism teaches that the things that arise discomfort and fear in us are the very doorways we need to walk through.
Yep.
That sense of discomfort and fear is the call to growth.
Yep.
And we obviously try to shut it down and go the opposite way, and then it just gets louder. It goes, Alan's not hearing. I better raise the volume, just like Sam I Am, until we finally say yes to it, and then it opens up a door of possibilities we didn't know existed. If that makes any sense.
Absolutely, and you see people whose lives are based on a fear, and they've lived their whole life on that fear, and it, sometimes you could even say it kills them. The good part of that is it doesn't matter. Eventually, they'll get it. That's how I look at it, and that way you can look at it in non-judgment.
But there is no judgment. It's like you can't judge a 3-year-old because they can't drive a car.
Right.
They're just 3 years old.
Right.
The hope is my hope, and I want to maybe go back to my experience and why I'm so passionate about this. But you're right. We are going to get it in the end game. In the end, we're going to get it because we have to. Because that's why we're here, to get it. I'm hoping. I want to help people to begin to get it this time around.
Right, of course.
They don't have to repeat the second grade, So,
certainly more pleasant, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. So there's the non-duality of it, is that there's no judgment associated with it, but there's a passion to help somebody to grow. Because my growth was a total gift of grace from God, if you will, and I know that it was given so that I could share it with others. I mean, if you're given a glimpse into those realms, and you keep it to yourself, you're not honoring it. You're not. It's at that point you're hoarding, and hoarding shuts you down. It shuts you down immediately.